In life, we all encounter obstacles, and those obstacles come in all different shapes, sizes, and forms. The question is, how do we handle those obstacles? Do we attack them head on, or do we allow them to make us quit? Welcome to the No Quit Living podcast, where we aim to motivate and inspire listeners to never give up on themselves, their dreams, or their goals. We will interview successful people from all walks of life as they share their no-quit stories when they had the choice to give up or give in, but they didn't. We thank you for listening, and we hope to be that jolt of positivity as you go for your greatness. Welcome to episode number 140 of the No Quit Living podcast. I'm your host, Christopher J. Worth, and today's theme of the day is motivation. Our quote of the day comes to us from Benjamin Franklin. Motivation is when your dreams put on work clothes. Today's episode is sponsored by the good people over at West Fair Communications, who publish the Westchester County Business Journal and the Fairfield County Business Journal. These newspapers do a wonderful job in covering all aspects of the business world within two of the most influential markets in the New York metropolitan area. You can also take advantage of their daily news feeds, which keep track on the companies and thought leaders in these important regions. For more information, take a look at www.westfaironline.com. Trust me, once you start reading, you won't quit. It is an honor to bring you today's episode. Our guest is quite an inspirational woman who has a great no-quit story of her own. She is a mother of 5, a wife, and a very successful businesswoman. Rachel Brenke definitely has her hands full, but she doesn't quit, she keeps going, and her positive approach and upbeat attitude would be impossible to miss. I hope you enjoy today's episode. Rachel, I'd like to welcome you to the No Quit Living podcast.
Thanks for having me.
I appreciate it. So the first question we ask everybody is, are you ready to bring it today?
Of course. I'm always ready to bring it.
That's good. That's good. So the number one objective of our show is to motivate and inspire listeners to never give up. I was curious if you had either a story of perseverance or a challenging time that tested you and you could have given up or given in, but you didn't and you kept on going.
When I was 20, I was diagnosed with cancer. And it was like in the pivotal time where I'm trying to figure out what I wanted to do with my life. And I told myself, if I get through it, I'm going to do what I want to do. And I did. And here I am. How vague, how vague is that? But no, I'm very blessed to now be 11 years cancer-free. I still daily deal with the issues arising out of that, still medication, radiation and surgeries, but doing well, overcame.
That's amazing, and I appreciate you sharing that. If you don't mind me asking, during that process, and I'm not going to say I've gone through that myself, but having many friends and some family members that went through that, how did you keep yourself motivated, inspired, and what kept you going? Because I know it's a long battle in many ways, and I'm just curious if you could just tell us a little bit. Was it something or things you were reading, people were telling you? How'd you stay focused on the end result?
It was kind of difficult. About that time, we didn't have Facebook. We had some MySpace, but it didn't really have like group forum activities. This is back when we still had split out online forums, and there was limited information, limited help groups available. And so I didn't have a lot of that. My husband was active duty Army at the time, and we had a 2-year-old. We had just one kid. We now have 5. And I just put my head down and focused on, all right, what is the treatment? What do I need to do? Because my only goal out of all of that, the thing that bothered me the most was the idea of my kid growing up without me here with him. And so I just was like, all right, doctors, what do we need to do? Let's be methodical. And I have that same approach to kind of everything, including business and personal athletic endeavors. I just kind of, all right, what is my end goal going to be? And let's make a plan and just have to pivot and grow as things change along the path. And thankfully, it came out in a good result.
That's amazing. Did you say 5 kids, by the way?
5 kids now, yes.
Wow. I have 3 myself, and that's a ridiculous handful. I can only imagine adding 2 more to the mix.
You know what? 3 is perfect, but we were told after the first. So I had the first one. They found the cancer while I was pregnant with him, but I didn't have it taken out till after, and obviously because I was pregnant. And they told us we weren't going to ever have kids anymore, so we sold all the baby stuff. And this was about, my husband was in and out, deployed to Iraq, and they were like, okay, you're never going to have any other kids. We went through treatments, nothing worked. We sold everything, baby crib, you name it. 2 weeks later, we were found out we were pregnant with number 2. And they're like, oh, well, this is a miracle because there was no help for it. They're like, You probably won't get pregnant again. I would like to take all 5 of them while they're all kicking, screaming, and crying and walk into that doctor's office and be like, oh, really? I wasn't going to have any more kids and fully blessed. I joke about that, but I just think it's so funny how they were so wrong because look at it.
Wow, that's amazing. Did they, because they were so wrong, did you help? Did they get any diaper help for you or anything else on your end there?
That was before I really learned about sponsorship and reality TV. I totally should have gone that path, but didn't. That's all right. That's all right.
That's a great story, and I think it's amazing because it talks about how much in life you can control, and there's so many things that you can't control. So it's interesting how some of those things happen. So I wanted to ask, if you wouldn't mind, Rachel, just telling our listeners a little bit about who you are and what you do today.
I am a practicing attorney and a business consultant. I also author and a podcast host myself. I love podcasting. The general premise of everything that I do is to help other people, particularly parents, be able to have a successful and legally protected business. Doesn't matter what industry they're in. That's the entire goal of my law firm and also my online sites and the books that I have on the market. Because when I was going through the cancer stuff and I was looking at my son and I thought to myself, not only do I want to get through this, but if I do, I want to be in a position where I can actually be around for my kids. I don't want to be in this rat race, 9 to 5, up and down the highway, not ever seeing them. And through that process of acquiring that for myself, I realized how much I wanted to be able to give that to other parents or other people. You don't necessarily have to be parents, but I wanted to give that type of freedom in life to others. And so I got my MBA, became a business consultant, and went to law school, and here we are.
If you could sum it up, and this might be hard for you to do, but what is the if you had to say the one thing that people either miss or overlook when it comes to protecting their business, what would that be?
Just liability protections.
Simply
business. No, I'm sorry, I ruined it.
That's all right. You can say 2. It was a tough question. It was a loaded question.
Liability protections, just the tools that you need in place to protect yourself from liability.
No, I appreciate you sharing that because some of our listeners are entrepreneurs and some of our listeners are possibly looking to start that first or additional business. So I appreciate you touching on that. So I wanted to ask you, you've been through a ton in your life and 11 years now cancer-free is amazing, and having 5 kids. How do you personally define success?
This is a hard one because I feel like success is different for everyone. And when you reach a certain level of what you believe to be success, your finish line moves. And I feel like it is always going to evolve that way. For me, though, my gauge of success was being able to have the freedom and flexibility to be around and present for my kids. And like when we get off here, I'm going to go downstairs. I'm going to make dinner as my kids come home from school. And so when that was able to occur and I was able to help financially support my family, that was success for me. Anything since then, even though I kind of feel like it's easy to get distracted and feel like the finish line changes as you reach goal after goal, I just try to remind myself, you've reached the major successful or level of success that you wanted already, whether you're a household name or not. That wasn't your goal in the beginning. And so you just what's interesting too, as a cancer survivor, I feel like people look at us as survivors and think, oh, you must just have this rosy glasses view of the world, how you appreciate every day and you don't take anything for granted. And sure, we may have a little bit different perspective, but I'm one of the first to admit that I'm human. Like I still, like you're talking about with success, my ultimate goal was to have the freedom and flexibility to be around my kids, but it's easy for me to still get distracted and go, oh, I just wish I was doing X, Y, and Z. I wish my podcast was on this level of success. And so even as a cancer survivor, that's just something that's given to us. It's not like they go, oh, you're in remission. Now here's your lifetime supply of gratefulness. I still have to work at that too. And the same thing for my view of success. I just have to remind myself when I'm frustrated or discouraged, you've already achieved what you wanted to achieve. Everything else is just a bonus at this point.
No, that's awesome that you define it that way. And that's one of my favorite questions because, as you said, success is different for everybody. And the best part about that question is nobody specifically defines it as money and monetary. Now, that can be a piece of it, and I can't tell somebody that they're wrong. But I love also the fact that you touched on having success being a moving target, because I think that's one of the things that people often overlook. And being in the business world myself and coaching and training and doing some motivational speaking, one of the things we focus on at our company is accountability and goals. And I think people too often set low enough goals that they know they're going to hit them, and then once they do, it's kind of like, all right, I'm good, as opposed to setting higher goals and keeping going. So I appreciate you touching that for a minute. So if you had to define yourself in only one word, what would that word be?
Motivated.
I like it. One of the things we look to do on each episode is to ask our guests different questions. And one of the ones that we often ask is if you have either a morning or a daily ritual that you swear by.
Every morning I get up and I have 2 cups of coffee, and while the kids are having breakfast, and then I try to go for a run, bike, or swim, since I'm a triathlete. I try to get that out of the way every morning. It sets my mood for the day. It just helps things to be, I just have to do it. I'm like addicted to that whole setup now, and if I don't have that in the morning, then I feel off for the day.
No, I like that. That's interesting. That I didn't know you were into the running, biking, and swimming, so it's pretty neat that you do that. And I'm sure the 2 cups of coffee get you going as well.
Yeah, that and 5 kids screaming for Cheerios.
Well, hopefully, you have some help with that. And how old are your kids now?
The oldest is 12 and the youngest is 3, so they're getting there. They're getting to be sufficient, and my husband's very hands-on, and we're a very partnership team with everything.
No, that's awesome. Wanted to ask if you have a favorite quote.
That you never have an issue until you have an issue.
Is that one of your quotes or somebody else?
It's one of my own. That's cheating. That's cheating.
So the word mentor is something that we touch base on quite often, and I was curious where you fall in that regard. And do you have mentors that you mentor people as far as that you doing the mentoring? And have there been mentors in your life that have helped you get to the level of success that you're at today?
I have done mentoring in the past. My life schedule right now just does not allow for me to be able to pour in as much as I'd want to give into a mentorship-mentee relationship. I loved that. I loved being a mentor. Myself, I haven't actually had someone that was a mentor to me, like one person. I've taken others that may be colleagues within the different industries that I work, and I may take a piece and learn a piece from out of them that they will pour into me, and I try to pour back into them as well. But I have never really had the traditional mentor-mentee, mentor pours into mentee type of relationship. I've kind of always just worked with other equals, and we've worked together and learned to grow together. I would love to have a mentor eventually. I feel like because I'm in such a weird space and I have carved my own way, there's not a lot of competitors doing what I'm doing, and there's not really anybody that's gone before me. It's hard to find someone that could be like the mentor. So I kind of have to glean it from multiple people.
No, it's interesting, and I think you've probably had mentors and mentees in different ways, just knowing who you are and what you do. And I think that's the best part about the word mentor, because it's very similar to me, like the word defining success is. It can be non-traditional. You can have a mentor that's in your life for an hour a week, and then obviously there are mentors that can be in your life for your entire lifetime, and you can be in their life as well. So I appreciate you sharing that with us. I was curious if you had to define the best advice you've ever received. What do you think the best advice you've ever received is?
Probably that you don't have to do everything, but you also don't have to say no to everything. You can always take the option of putting stuff in a pending list or a not now, but I'll come back around to it. I'm a very passionate and excitable person. That comes on very quickly about certain things, and I have to sometimes remind myself, and I've had mentors like we were talking about in my life, who have reminded me, you could do it later. You don't have to do it now. And if that fire and burning passion for that project or endeavor still exists when you have time to actually commit to it, then do it. If you no longer have it then obviously it wasn't meant to be at that time in life.
No, that's good advice, and I think in today's day and age, a lot of people try to do everything and try to please everybody. And even on a personal side, if there's a business or a venture you want to do, you get excited about it, but there's some times where you need to say, you know what, I'm going to put this on the back burner. And like you said, if a week, a month, 6 months down the road, you still have that passion or desire, then you know it's probably something that you're meant to do.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So assuming the 20-year-old version of yourself would have listened, what is the one piece of advice you'd give to the 20-year-old Rachel?
Embrace the doors that will be closing and thank them for closing. Because I'm totally not where at all I thought I would be whatsoever. It's funny you say 20-year-old because that's when I was diagnosed with cancer. So it's at maybe the pre-cancer 20-year-old, that's what I would say. The post-cancer diagnosis 20-year-old, no, I'd probably still say the same thing. I would just be looking at it from a different. Then I would know that I'm going to make it through the other side. So either way, I would give the same advice to the pre and post cancer 20-year-old.
No, and I think it's good advice. So, assuming that I could grant you to have dinner with anybody, dead or alive, who would that be and why?
Robin Williams, because he's hilarious. I felt like he was a wonderful person. I always loved following his career. This is so strange, I'm sure, but I follow his daughter on Instagram to see how she's doing since he's passed. And I had my own struggles with depression, and I would just love to be able to sit down and talk with him. And maybe I could have made some sort of impact. Not that I'm anybody, but I always wonder if one more person could have said something. But yeah, Robin Williams would be my choice.
No, he was one of my favorite actors, and it's funny, he was a genius when it comes to comedy, but one of my favorite movies of his of all time was actually Good Will Hunting, and obviously that was not a comedy, but I think there's so many people that have been impacted by his life, and it's one of the things where I think made people realize is that you never know what somebody else is going through, and one of the things we often talk about on our show is making that impact or having that impact on different people's lives, and sometimes it's maybe just asking somebody how they're doing or sending them a text message or calling them on the phone just to see how they are. And I think what Robin's passing taught so many people was just how fragile and special life is and why it's important to reach out to people.
Mm-hmm. And when everyone's different, when I was going through a lot of the depression a couple years ago, I had a girlfriend who drove an hour to my house because I just wasn't answering texts. I was just burying myself in work. I didn't want to talk about it because I didn't know what I was going to say, and I didn't want anybody to think differently of me. And she drove an hour to my house and sat on my doorstep in like 90-degree heat with ice cream, with a tub of ice cream. And she's texting me over and over, ringing the doorbell, and I just wouldn't answer. And I finally did, and she's still in my phone as ice cream delivery because it was a pivotal moment to see that someone, and I hadn't known her that long. It wasn't like we had been BFFs for years. We had met through work, and she had just picked up on these little things, and that was a pivotal moment to see that someone truly cared.
That's a great story, and I think the takeaway from that is for our listeners is, there's probably a lot of people in our lives that we should reach out to, and not 10, 20, 30 every day. But the reality is there's probably people in our lives today, each and every one of us, that we know or think about, hey, I haven't heard from that person, or hopefully they're doing okay. So hopefully if this is impactful to people, they'll pick up the phone and either send that message, whether it's a phone call, text message, or an email. So I appreciate you sharing that with us. So I'd like to change lanes now into what we call our hot seat questions. And the only request we have is that you just spit out the first thing that comes to mind.
Oh, that's scary.
Scary, but as you'll see, it's not nearly as scary as it sounds.
Okay, awesome.
So if you had one last meal and you can choose absolutely anything, what would that be?
Meatloaf and mashed potatoes.
What is your favorite smell?
Oh, Disney's Yacht Club, the hotel down there in Walt Disney World.
Favorite sport?
Triathlon.
Favorite team?
Oh, well, Team USA.
All right.
Does that count?
That 100% counts. These are all 100% original answers, so you can answer them however you want.
Cool.
All-time favorite movie?
Where the Red Fern Grows.
Do you have a favorite book?
Same one.
Favorite singer or band?
Oh, Backstreet Boys.
Really? Wow.
Yes.
Wow. All right. If you were in a foxhole and you could choose only one person to have your back, who would that be?
Oh, my husband.
I'm still stuck on the Backstreet Boys.
I know. Hey, I saw them in concert. And it was good because it was like the 13-year-old self was excited. But then I was like, yo, guys, you're almost 50. You're like 40. It's like, why are we doing this?
That's awesome. So I wanted to ask if there's anything exciting that you're working on or something coming up in the future that you'd like to tell our listeners about.
On a business level, I'm just trucking along, continuing to do legal stuff, putting out information about the new GDPR stuff that's going on for the EU countries. On a personal level, we're just coming up to summertime. I am so excited that I've adjusted my schedule to be around with the kids a little bit more. In July, I'm headed to Denmark to compete with Team USA at the World Championships for triathlon. So I'm excited for that.
So you must be a pretty serious triathlete then.
I'm trying to be.
That's awesome. I can ride a bike and swim and run, but not nearly as fast as you can. So kudos for that. So I wanted to ask, if you could snap your finger and automatically fast forward to exactly 1 year from today, and you could have accomplished any goal whatsoever, what would that goal be?
I would like to be in Forbes magazine.
That's awesome. If you don't mind me asking, why? From a business, personal, or both?
Both. I think it kind of would give me a little credibility, give me a lot of credibility, but it would help me to realize that I have achieved and other people believe in what I'm doing for entrepreneurs also.
No,
maybe.
I think you definitely would. It would give you credibility on many different fronts. And I wanted to ask you, what is the one thing that you wish that you knew 5 years ago?
One thing I wish I knew. Well, I think 5 years ago, in business and just personal life, I was struggling with having others help me. I was wanting to do it all. And so I wish that I would have learned better management skills and had that 5 years ago. I think I'd be even further along personally and career-wise now.
And you mentioned podcast. Would you mind just telling our listeners a little bit about your show?
Yes, it is called The Business Bites, and it's 10 to 15-minute episodes for busy entrepreneurs. The entire premise of it arose out of my own need and desire to listen to podcasts, but I don't have time to sit down for an hour necessarily a day to listen. And so I thought, well, what if I can listen to something on the way to car pickup or drop the kids off at swim lessons? And that's how it came about, and I love it. It's super exciting.
Do you have guests on your show, or is it just you giving those bites?
It's both. It primarily started out as me, and then I found that audiences really do enjoy the talking back and forth, but we don't have a lot of fluff. Much like this interview. This is really good. It's a lot and straight to the point. I always hate the podcasts where you have, or listening to them, where you have 20 to 30 minutes of fluff and not a lot of tangible takeaways for the listener.
No, I couldn't agree more. And the reason we like to keep ours between 20 and 25 minutes is just we feel that that's a good length of time, whether it's, again, to and from work or lunch break or waiting for kids' practice and things. So I'm glad. And I think your show is something that, 10 to 15 minutes is a perfect amount of time, because I always tell people everybody can't find an hour, 2 hours in their day, but everybody can find 10 or 15 minutes along the way.
And I talk really fast, so it's a lot of information in 10 to 15 minutes. So.
And most people also don't know you can actually speed up the speed of podcasts as well, too.
Oh, yeah, that is true.
So before we let you go, I wanted to ask, do you have any parting words you'd like to leave with our listeners?
I think the biggest thing is not to look at how other people are handling adversity or an issue that's occurring in life, but figure out what works best for you, because all of our circumstances are different. I'm kind of thankful that there weren't cancer support groups when I went through it, because I might have spent the entire time upset about why isn't my family doing X like they are for Alice, or why am I feeling crappy and this person's feeling great. Really look inward. You can look outside for inspiration, but look inward and stay within yourself to accomplish whatever it is with whatever you're faced with at that time.
No, that's good advice. And I think we can look to different people for different things, and I think at the end of the day, it's good to always draw from other people's experiences, but at the end of the day, you need to look at yourself inside out and say, okay, this is what I need to do, and this is how it's going to work for you, because the reality is, if you and I were going through the same thing, even though it's the same thing, same diagnosis, you're going to deal with it a lot different than I am, but the reality is you can get advice and suggestions from people, but after that, you need to figure out how you need to do it and apply it to your own life.
And that piece of advice can be applied to business. I see that big with business owners, with parenting, with relationships. At the end of the day, you have to find it within yourself. And that sounds so cliche, but it's so true. And it's something I'm still working on it, to focus on my strengths and my goals and desires for life over maybe what someone else's is doing.
No, that's good advice. And I think a lot of business advice can be taken to personal, family, parenting as well, because at the end of the day, it's always a ongoing changing goal. As you said, is nobody sets a goal from day one, and you having kids yourself, obviously a 2 and a 3-year-old, it's very different than a 12 or 13-year-old, so I appreciate you touching that. And last question I have for you is, what's the best way for our listeners to either connect, follow, or to find out a little bit more about what you're doing?
You guys can find me at rachelbrenke.com. I'm also the only Rachel Brenke in the world, so you can find me with that on any of the social media platforms. I always joke, I have 4 brother-in-laws, and they're all single, and when they bring home a Rachel, I'm like, nope, can't marry her. I've worked too hard for my SEO and then and my links. No, I joke, semi-joke, but seriously, you guys can find me anywhere. rachelbrenke.com is kind of the mothership that will spur you out to the different links of the different stuff I have going on. But yeah, feel free to reach out. I love to talk, obviously, and I love to just pour into others and help them as well.
Well, Rachel, listen, I really appreciate you spending some time with us, and I look forward to connecting with you and staying in touch.
Sounds good. Thank you so much.
Thank you for listening to episode number 140. Rachel Brenke is an 11-year cancer survivor that is currently kicking life's butt. Her definition of success, I think, was spot on. She said it's a moving target and it's different for everyone. She also touched upon success for her being all about freedom and flexibility. In her closing words, Rachel suggested that we don't look at how others face adversity, but figure out what works for us. It's important to look to others for advice and suggestions, but make sure you do what works for you. So to our no-quit tribe, I pose that same question to you. How do you handle adversity? Do you approach it with a woe is me or a why me attitude, or do you attack adversity head-on with a positive approach? The next time you face adversity, and it definitely hits us all, I challenge you to attack it head-on. Remain positive, stay focused and determined, and kick its butt as you go for your greatness. And lastly, to our listeners, thank you. We truly appreciate your time, and we hope our episodes inspire you to keep on attacking life and never giving up. To quote Dr. Norman Vincent Peale, it's always too early to quit.